Hanoi.
Okay. So you're the U.S. So even before you start playing face to face, most of the pre-raid stuff can be done um, individually because it usually takes a little longer. So the U.S. player is planning their raid routes, and in the module you've got your markers. Let me see if I can find them. But there should be. Oh yeah, planning markers. So there's a waypoint. Do you see it up in the Gulf of Tonkin?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what you do as the U.S. player, you have to shift click to select it, and you basically turn it to where you want it to be, and then you can make it invisible to the other player, but you can still see it. So in the module, that makes it easy to sort of plan on the whole map and see where you're going instead of having to constantly refer to a little mini map. And yeah, it's just in the planning phase. The planning markers. You can even throw in a target location and hide it from the other player, so you don't forget which of the hexes you're flying over you're trying to destroy. And then as the DRV player, I am going to basically spend points improving existing AAA. So on the map you have the L, M, and H stars. Those are light, medium, and heavy flak. And you can improve those for points. Basically, it's 1 point to place a light, 1 more point to increase it to medium, and then heavy is twice as much as medium. And then you get a certain number of SAMs and dummy SAMs. And that's where it starts getting tricky because you have SAMs, you have early warning radar, and some of them are dummies. So when the DRV decides to turn the radar on, you see a SAM warning counter pop up. Usually they're hidden, and then if they've got a lock on, you flip it over to here. So it's they've got a lock on me, but you don't know if it's a dummy or just a radar. And then if it fires, then oh yeah, it's a SAM. And the SAM range is pretty big, but it's obviously more accurate the closer you are. Yeah, here's the missile launch. Okay, actual SAM's launched. So the DRV goes about setting up all their SAMs and AAA, and it's all hidden. The scenarios usually to sort of tell you where you can place things, but in general, you just sort of put them near where you think the ingress is of the U.S. or near where you think they might be bombing. But because the bombing is kind of random, you have to spread them out so you're not reading the U.S. Commander's mind. And the U.S. order of battle here is 6 flights of 4 thuds bombing. So I better grab my ADC, my aircraft information sheet. Do you have yours handy?
I do.
Okay. So we've got Air Force. So you can toss the USN aircraft data sheet aside. And we've got an F-105 Thud on a bombing mission.
Yeah, it's a Thunder Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, cool.
And it's the top line there because it's the D.
Yep.
So it's got radar navigation, AIM-9Bs, guns.
Yep.
Works at night, has terrain following radar, and then has all those notes, Q, R, S, and T, which, they're on the back side. So Q is Ryan's Raiders. That's only if it's Ryan's Raiders. R, the AIM-9B are only available if indicated. So does not look like it. Rear warning radar is available October 66, and this is in July 65, so there is no radar warning. T, jamming, defensive jamming, is also available in October 66. So there's no jamming, no radar warning, and no AIM-9Bs. So you've basically got bombs and guns. You've got some flights of F, oh, there we go. F-105s. And they're following their path. Sorry, let's finish prior to the raid. So you basically decide where they all come in, and then the path they have to follow, and they have to stay within 2 hexes of that path at all times. And then once they hit the target, if they're forced to head back, they can kind of head back any way they can. But if they're damaged and they leave in a different area than they said they would, then there's a roll to see if the pilot, the aircraft actually survives. It's more likely if they leave where they were supposed to.
Yep.
So DRV sets up stuff, US plans their route, and then you roll for early warning radar. You roll for air deployment, depending on what the scenario says. So yeah, and the MiGs are especially prone to panicking. So because you only have F-105s, usually you get like an Iron Hand flight, which will have anti-radar missiles to take out the SAMs beforehand. But here you just have the bombers, so if you want to take out the SAMs, you have to bomb them first. And let's just walk through a raid turn.
Yep.
So there's no jamming. Detection phase, so basically you would have flights we each have flights on the map, but they are face down. So for instance, I might have a flight here, but you don't know if it's really there or not. So
yep.
I'll have a couple dummies around, and you can basically create dummies anytime you need to, and anytime you have available dummies, as the DRV, the scenario rules will tell you how many you have. and you treat them just like any other aircraft until the oh, sorry, these should be generic DRV. So it'll be like this. Let's say I have 3 flights here. Now you'll roll, do that. You'll roll on the detection table, which is on the player aid. It's 10.3. Sorry, 10.2 is the detection table. And you basically roll roll for each aircraft. And if you detect them, then if they're a dummy, they just go away. If they're detected, then they flip. So they'll usually have the question mark and then they flip. So when the counters are like this, you have not determined what kind of aircraft it is yet. Once you get close enough, then it's replaced with the actual flight. So it would change to the actual flight.
Sorry, with the detection, is that every turn or do you have to be in a certain range?
It's every turn.
Yep.
Because you theoretically got AWACS and other stuff off board.
Yep.
So it's every turn, and the DRV gets to do it to the US too. Then actually this so detection is done. Then we go on to movement, and for movement, it's really just you click on the pool button. So so the US goes first, and it draws a force pool. See the initiative button up there, US
Yep.
pool. So then you as the US player would get to move 3 flights. Since they start off board, you basically bring them on the hex one at a time. And if you look at the ADC, your Thunder Chief has a combat speed of 4, 5, 5 clean and 3, 4 loaded. So it's 3, 4 dash, meaning the Thunder Chief cannot be flying high when it's laden, which when it has bombs. So you get 3 movement points at low and 4 movement points at medium altitude. And each movement point, you basically move forward or turn, and you get a free turn depending on how fast you're moving. So D and F are exactly the same, except that the F has 2 crew and the D has 1.
Okay.
That's why they're both in the same thing there. So you move flights one at a time, and after you spend each movement, I can say, "Surprise! I'm firing on you," and turn on a SAM or flip up, just fire a missile from a SAM I've already locked onto you with. And then we resolve it on the SAM table on the play aids.
AAA table under the race sequence of play.
Oh, right, because it's all on the same. So depending on the altitude, you roll equal to or greater, and then that's a hit, and then you have to see if it's actually a hit or what happens. So then you go to the morale check. Sorry, not morale check. Where is? Okay, yeah, it's in the other set of charts. Of course it is. So it's on the brown play aids under 15.42.
So
So
you
you
roll
roll
to
to
get a
see
hit, and then it'll roll to see if
to
it's
see.
actually a hit. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you roll the damage.
Yeah.
So it's 3 rolls.
Yes. Yeah. You roll. Well, you have to roll acquisition to begin with, and
Yeah.
then once you have acquisition, then you can attack, and then the target rolls for defense, and then you roll for damage. So yeah,
Yeah.
it takes quite a few rolls, but most of them are just in acquisition because you're going to be trying to acquire a lot more than you are firing SAMs. So that's SAMs for anti-aircraft. Basically, when you fly over or next to it, it shoots at you on the and that's on the AAA table. The 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 line that says SAM/light is to indicate that SAMs have a built-in light AAA with them. So
Yep.
even if the SAM misses you, they still have some weapons they can shoot at you. And you may have an older player
Go
aid
for it.
card. So
Go
the
for it. I
blue
don't know which one.
the blue and green card, there's a bunch of errata for it, so you can actually download the new one from Lee Brincombe Wood's website. I forget what it's called. Airbattle.co.uk. So that has errata, rulebook, FAQ, and then the blue and green player aid cards, and extra planning maps and log sheets if you need them. So that's SAMs and AAA. Now, once you have survived either SAMs or AAA, then you have to do the morale check, and you're going to want to roll high on 2 dice. So if you'll notice the number of dots next to the title of the chart, it's
Yep.
either 1 dot or 2. That's how many dice you roll.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So and then depending on your morale check, you may end up jettisoning your bombs, which automatically cancels your mission. And then if you are disordered, you also jettison and you are aborted unless unless you're not bombing. But bombing flights, basically, if they jettison their bombs, then they abort.
Where is the chart?
It's a 13.1 on the
Yeah.
blue side. Yeah, it's air-to-air combat. That's the real problem.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
also
okay.
notice the aggression value. So each flight gets an aggression value the first time they participate in combat, and
Yeah.
that's on the blue sheet. You roll that up fresh every time. Flight quality table 27.4 underneath the random events, and you want pluses because it gives pluses in air-to-air combat. But
Oh,
depending on the morale check, you might actually lose quality.
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really annoying when your +0 flight goes to -1 and you're like, really? Grow a spine, guys. So, what's next? Air to air. So let's take a look at my my discovered MiG-17 flight and this flight A over here.
And I'm just going to reconnect.
So my MiG-17s get to move at not very fast. So I'm actually going to set their throttle to dash, which means I mark off one of their fuel.
Yeah.
And then I can turn left before I move by spending a movement point, and then 1, 2, 3. And I move there, but I'm attacking you. So you move into the enemy's hex, and then you try to initiate air-to-air combat. It may not
Right.
work. So it's not
I
like,
see.
okay, now I get to fire. No, you need to roll for engagement, which is 11.2.
Am I meant to see US counter there?
No, I'm using 2 DRV counters. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Hold on, let me switch to solo, and then let me throw a US Air Force in there.
Okay.
Okay, so my MiG-17s are attacking your F-105s.
Yep.
Now, the direction they come in from, in respect to your facing, is important for the engagement. So, if you're detected and if you're undetected, the values I need to roll are different, and then there are a bunch of modifiers for engagement at all. So we both roll. This is important. You both roll, and it may happen that I can't see you, but you see me. So then you can engage me, but I can't engage you. And then it's also possible that we can engage each other and see how many shots we get off at each other. So it's usually daytime. Let's say we're both detected, and you roll 2 sets of 2 dice. I roll 7, you roll 15. So even detected, I needed to roll a 9 or better. So I do not, my MiGs are either above you or you are hiding behind some light clouds. But with your 15, you definitely detect me. Even if I were undetected, you would see me flying by. And then, of course, there are all the modifiers, usually the aggression value. So MiG flights tend to be in the -1 to -2 range, except for MiG-21s, which are in the 0 to -1 range. And US flights are +1 to -1. But even with a -1, you would have detected me. So that means you get to engage me, and then you move over to the maneuver table in 11.3. And this tells you how many shots you get. So we're dogfighting now, and the MiG see you on their tail, but they don't really have a chance to get you. And they may get a few shots at you, but the flight is disadvantaged because you have surprise, and your flight has surprise because you engaged me and I did not engage you.
Yep.
So the US would get a +3, the DRV would get a -1. And then there are the geometry modifiers. So the defender is behind you, so you get a -1. And then if I had engaged you appropriately, I'd get a +1, but it ends up canceling out with the disadvantage. So then, depending on the number of aircraft, your flights have 4 aircraft each for the first scenario. So you roll 2d10 and you add the maneuver differential. So this is when you go back to the ADC and you look at the maneuver of the F-105. Let's say we're at medium altitude. which is a 3. So it's not great because you're laden. And actually, sorry, if the DRV attacks the U.S. and the U.S. is the only one that gets an engagement, you can just let them go. You can say, I'm not going to worry about them because I need to drop these bombs. So that's probably what you'd want to do in this situation, because getting into a dogfight will lead to you jettisoning your bombs. But let's say you had already done that and then you got attacked. You look at your maneuver, which would be clean then, so it's a 5, and the MiG-17 is also a 5, so there's no maneuver differential. Aggression differential is probably a +1 in your favor here. Geometry for you is a -1, and flight has surprise, which is +3. So
can I just jump in? I'm looking
yeah.
at the geometry, and it appears what I'm looking at, the way the US can see it.
So
You're in
I'm coming in from here.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's where you move into the hex from. So yeah, sometimes you won't even put it in the hex and just say, okay, let's resolve it, and then we'll figure out scattering. So you roll to see how many shots you get. Say you get an 11, and after the modifiers, you basically are left with the +3 because you have -1 for geometry, but +1 for aggression differential.
Mm-hmm.
And 11 plus 3 is 14. You have 4 aircraft. That gives you 2 shots. So you basically look at your weapons, and you can. Right now, you only have guns, but you could also spend another. Use another weapon to improve your roll, I believe. It's not to improve your roll. It's okay. Yeah, it's in shot resolution. Sorry, 11.32. So you find the combat value of the selected weapon, which is at the very bottom of the ADC. So guns are rated at 2. If you had your sidewinders, they would be at 2 also. So in your shot resolution, you have 2 shots. They're 2 dice each, and they're going to get a +2 for the rating of the weapon and +1 if you have another undepleted air-to-air weapon. So if you have missiles and guns, you can fire guns and get a +1 for missiles. So it would be a +3. You get 2 shots. Yikes! So 22 and 11. So 22 is no effect, and the 11 is also no effect. So notice that table, you can actually roll too high. Oh man, I forgot they
Okay.
did that. That's annoying. However, if you had hit them, then you go to damage allocation on the next page on 12.1, and you roll. The DRV flights are usually 2 aircraft. So you'd roll a d10 and scroll down to 2, which is 1. So the first aircraft in the flight would take the damage. Now, if it says C1 or C2, what that means is that if there is a crippled aircraft in the flight, that's what gets hit, and then you go to the number. And obviously, if a crippled aircraft gets hit again, it is shot down. Then you roll on that handy-dandy morale check table. So as the US, you had surprise. Let's say you have a +1 aggression. Sadly, you did not shoot anyone down, so it's just a +2 on 2 dice, 22, which is no effect. That was a good time to roll high. And then the DRV flight was disadvantaged and shot no one down, and their aggression value is 0, so they're at a -1, and they roll a 6, which is disordered and aggression of -2. So when you're disordered, basically all you can do is you can either, as the DRV, basically all you can do is go land somewhere. Or if you have an orbit spot handy, like this one over here, if you can see the orbit there.
Yep.
If you can orbit there for a while and try to fix it with a morale roll, but basically, if you're even at a rally point, you have to roll a 20 on 2 dice with the aggression thrown in. And since I just lost 2 aggression, I have to roll 2 dice plus 8 minus 2. So I need to roll a 14 or better to recover. If there were MiGs nearby, you would have to roll a die to see if your bombers jettison. So if I attack, the flight in front of you, or if you're stacked together and I attack one of the flights, your other flights might panic, but it's unlikely.
Yep.
And then once they're disordered, like I said, they're basically useless. U.S. flights that are disordered usually just abort and head back, especially if they're bombing flights. They have to.
I think my one question I've got is aggression value.
Yeah,
How do you set that again?
that's the flight quality table.
And you just roll that at the start of the scenario?
No, you roll it up when something happens to that flight. Let's see how they're feeling today. Did they spend a little too long with in the brothel last night? Who knows? I guess if they're Navy, they're stuck on the ship, so they didn't. But these are Air Force, so maybe. So that's basically what the U.S. needs to know for the first few missions. Move around. Try not to get caught by too many SAMs at the same time. And the MiGs are generally not going to hurt you, but sometimes they really can. Like if they pop up from, if you're at low altitude and they pop up from the deck undetected in your rear arc, you're going to have a hard time. Oh, zoom climbing. So if you change altitudes more quickly than you're supposed to, then you don't move as fast. That's just the rule book in movement.
I assume that's about it for the basics.
Yeah, but let's go over the basics for the DRV since they're a little more complicated.
Yep.
I was talking about the SAM units before. So you're going to have hidden SAM units, and you actually have to write down which ones are dummies somewhere. Let's see. You can actually tell it to become a dummy, and then when you flip it, no. Okay. So each SAM you're going to have to give it an ID. So you have to go in, change ID to 11. Okay, and then that SAM, when it locks onto a target, you're going to create a marker, an acquisition marker, and you actually have to tell it who you're activating. Who you're targeting, so that you can't just switch things around.
Yeah.
So, and then there are 2 kinds of acquisition. There's partial acquisition and full acquisition. And again, these are on the SAM acquisition tables. So partial acquisition makes it easier to get a full acquisition later, but is generally not what you want for an attack. I mean, you can try it anyway and hope to scare them into jettisoning their bombs.
Yep.
So if your acquisition is partial, ID is 11. So you make sure the acquisition number matches your SAM number, the ID number. Put it on the aircraft.
Yep.
And each SAM can only track one flight at a time. So if you want to acquire another flight, you first remove the acquisition from the flight you have a lock on, and then try to lock onto the other. So you may not have a lock at all after you try that. But
No.
because the range is generally pretty long, the SAM range for acquisition is 12 hexes, and I mean even the fastest aircraft is only moving 8, I think. You've got a little time you've got a couple turns to get that acquisition going. So let's say you're detected, and in the first scenario you have no jamming and you have no radar warning. So 2 dice, 6 is enough for a partial acquisition. Okay, then you move a bit, and then I can try again. And this time I get, it's easier because you're already partially acquired. A 5 keeps me at partial acquisition. Now you're probably bombing me. There we go, I finally acquire you. And then when you move, I can fire at you. And the SAM attack is just a straight roll to see if it gets to you. Yeah, so I roll the SAM attack, 12, which is a miss, but you also roll your defense. So you don't have any defensive jamming. You're not in a jamming cell or in a chaff corridor or anything. 3, so no effect. So if but it's a minus 2. It doesn't matter. Your SAM defense doesn't do anything, but I miss anyway. If the SAM attack hits and you roll avoidance, then you put a SAM avoidance counter on yourself. Right, and so you'd move into one of those 2 hexes or hex edges. It uses up 1 MP because remember, it's SAM attacks happen while you are moving. And then in the next on the next turn, you have to spend another movement point to get rid of the SAM avoidance. But sadly for the bombers, SAM avoidance also jettisons all their bombs, so they will abort and head back to base.
So, even though you missed when you fired, they still jettison, they still go home.
If they have to avoid it, yes. So because I rolled no effect for the US flight, you didn't even see the SAM coming. It just totally missed, and you were unaware.
Yep.
So you'd be fine. Yeah. So I have to roll a hit, and then the US sees if it actually hits or not.
Yep.
And then SAM launchers have 3 missiles. They can, well, 3 shots. You can fire a salvo to improve your chance of hitting. It gives a +2, but then still you're hitting on a 12 or more. And then there's lock on after launch, but that doesn't happen until 67. So when a SAM turns on its radar, you get the SAM warning marker. And you don't know if it's a real SAM or a dummy, because it could actually turn out to be a real SAM or a dummy, depending on which it is. This become is not very helpful. So you get a SAM warning, radar's on, and then if it fires or if you see it, then it becomes a SAM. Otherwise, it might just be a dummy, in which case you don't know it. Here's the other thing. The DRV has to set up some of its SAMs in plain sight, so just straight up on the map.
Yep.
And that's usually where they'll put the dummies, because then they don't have to pretend that try to unhide them and whatnot. They
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, that's definitely a SAM. Oh look, it has radar." Okay.
Mm.
Another thing about SAMs, if you shoot an anti-radiation missile at one, the SAM gets to roll on. SAM can either turn off the radar and be safe, but then take a while to turn it back on, or they may actually freak out and they'll have to roll on the arm morale check. Roll for each arm launched at a radar. If the roll is equal to or less than 5, the radar shuts down. It's a +3 if the flight has not been detected. So it's unlikely that they will be able to shut down, but if you're approaching, and I know and I visually ID'd the airplanes, and I know it's probably an anti-radiation flight, I can turn them off during the admin phase. So let's move on to that. Fuel. If you dashed or were in air-to-air combat, you spend a fuel. And the amount of fuel is listed in the column right after crew. So that's basically how many turns of dash and or air-to-air combat you can do before you have to head back. So the F-105 has 5 fuel, so you can dash for 5 turns or have 5 run-ins with the enemy aircraft before you start running into trouble. SAM location. You get to roll to locate SAM battalions, like you would at the beginning of the game, and that is 15.13. It depends on the kind of flight, but if you have an SEAD flight, that hunt SAMs, you get to roll for all the SAMs within 3 hexes to see if you see them. And if it launched, you can actually detect them more easily. So when they are at this stage, they can still launch. You're pretty sure it's a SAM, but you can't attack it yet. It's only when they are on the actual SAM side that they can be bombed. Oh yeah, dummy SAM sites always set up located. So and they do not have radar. But there are also dummy radars which act like dummy SAMs but are just radars. So you'd roll to locate any SAMs near your flights. Then we roll on the tracking. So after everyone's moved, so we go back and forth. DRV moves a flight, you move a flight, DRV moves a flight, US moves a flight. DRV obviously usually has fewer flights, and they actually can draw a 0, which gives the US 2 turns in a row. But once they've moved all their flights, it's basically just the US moving all their flights, conga line style. If you notice on the aircraft counters, there is a suit if they've been detected. So both of ours are hearts. And we get to roll on the track table, which is 10.3. It's on the green.
Yep.
And if you look at the scenario, you will see that the detection level for the US is F, and for the DRV, it's C. So the DRV would roll 15, scroll down to 15, look at detection level C, and they would see that all hearts are no longer detected. So the one unit there ceases to be detected. And then the US would roll 13, and they're at an F, so they would also lose track of hearts. So if there are, you see the 6 through 11, there are a lot of curly brackets. That's you lose track of those only if they are on the deck, or let's see, it says, or at low altitude, more than 10 hexes from an all-sea hex. So if they're low, they get lost in the haze. Otherwise, they stay detected. And if you roll a 2, then you lose detection on everything. So that's the track phase. Then SAM acquisition. So this is when SAMs roll to see if they acquire anything. Now, they can't turn their radar on right now. So they had to have done that during the admin phase, which is now. So basically, you have to turn it on the turn before you want to use it. So you control whether the radar of a SAM is on, but you do have to plan ahead a bit, because if I remember correctly, like each turn is like a minute. Yeah, 1 minute per turn. So you're like, man, they don't get to do much each turn. Well, yeah, it takes more than a minute to warm up the radar and get tracking. Yeah, get the old Soviet stuff to work. I guess it's not that old
Kick
at
it a
this
few
point.
times.
Yeah, okay. little percussive maintenance. So during the admin phase is when a bunch of stuff happens. So you roll for recovery from disorder, remove spot jamming, switch fire can radars on or off, switch SAM radars on or off, and place SAM warning counters. Right, if they're hidden and you turn them on, then the SAM warning goes there. Remove SAM launch counters, which means it's harder for you to detect the next turn. Generate dummy counters, make DRV flights ready or move them into revetments. Roll for loss of AAA suppression, et cetera, parachuting crew land, blah, blah, blah. And then the US sets up the flights that will enter on the next turn. So that's the other thing about planning, is that you can have the, you can have your SEAD flights enter a couple turns before your bombing flights, or on the same turn, or you can space them out pretty much however you like. And it's only the bombing flights that have to follow the route closely. Other flights can, cap flights can go pretty much anywhere, and the SEAD flights have a little more room to move around. Yeah, if you look under US organization in the rule book, it's number 8. The tasks actually let you know what each kind of unit can do. So like we were talking about the bombing,
Yep.
the bombing task, they can only attack targets in the target hex and AAA fire cannon SAM in or adjacent to it. And then they can only defend against air-to-air. They cannot engage. And then must abort if ordnance jettisoned. So Cap gets to sort of fly everywhere. See, flight path 8.31. Bombing or recon follow the rate of flight path from ingress to egress. You have to enter and stay within 2 hexes of the ingress hex, and you may not intentionally stray more than 2 hexes from the line. I think, yeah, other tasking doesn't have to follow that. So cap, armed escort, SEAD, they can pretty much fly wherever, but the bombing flights all have to follow that path. And like I had said, any flights that abort can move freely